letter from Mr. and Mrs. Morse. This letter is to inform the commission that we will be doing repairs to the 3 chimneys on our home at 188 Main Street this fall. Since this is a repair to return the chimneys to their original condition with the same materials, brick and mortar, we will not be asking for a historic district certificate of approval. However, we felt a notice of this work was important for the record. We have requested a residential building permit for these repairs. Thank you, Bob Morse, Virginia Morse.
Anyone who'd like to donate to the cost of chimney repair is welcome.
No, thank you.
I've done that a few
Been
times.
there, done that, yeah.
I don't want to do it again.
Nope. No, thank you. The minutes from the October 12th meeting, everyone got them? I emailed them out?
Yes.
Yes? Do we have any corrections or amendments or comments for those?
How about a motion to approve?
Motion to approve by Glenn,
Second.
second by Ellie, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
All right.
abstain. I wasn't here.
You don't have to
Yeah.
abstain, because you can just vote to approve them.
That's according to NHMA.
Yes, exactly. Town board updates, do we have any?
I have something, Madam Chair.
For the planning board?
Yes,
Okay.
but it's going to require some discussion, and I was wondering if we could do it perhaps at the end under maybe other business of some kind, so that we don't delay the.
Yes,
the
I will,
opportunity.
I will put planning board update. Okay, after public comment.
It's regarding a potential warrant article
Okay,
that has some effect potentially on historic district, and so we want to make sure that we bring it before the agency. first.
okay, perfect. CIP, you're all set with that, right? You
Yeah,
guys-
the one for this past year basically is done, it's been distributed, and we've started collecting requests from departments for the next one, for this coming 6-year period.
Mhm.
And we haven't met yet as a committee, but that will happen sometime probably within the next month, will be the first meeting.
Perfect. Do we have a selectmen's update?
We're going to be forming 2 task forces to deal with 2 major issues in the community, one of which is looking at the potential to put in solar panels on the landfill site on 125. And so we'll be issuing a release shortly to ask for community volunteers to serve in that committee. It's more like a task force in the committee, should be about a year and a half, and so that we can bring something forward in March of 2023. The other project that we're initiating is reviewing the issues regarding waste management and trash disposal in the town of Kingston. Probably one of the costliest items we have in our budget. Our contract is up a year from now, and we want to start looking at what our options are between now and then. So another group is going to be forming for the next year and a half, so that we can move forward on that. Other than that, I don't think we have anything else. The zoning board is also meeting this week, but it has, both properties are not within the historic districts.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks, Ellie. Heritage Commission?
I wasn't at the Heritage Commission meeting, so I don't have an update. Maybe Ernie wants to tell us.
Ernie, can you briefly, if there's anything impacting?
What did I miss on the last meeting?
That pertains to the hit,
No.
not a lot. Nothing that pertains to this board?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
And the zoning board?
That's what I said.
Oh,
We
that
have
you
2
already did
hearings-
zoning
Yeah,
board.
we have
Sorry.
3 hearings tomorrow, but neither pertain to the HDC.
I have those out of, oh, perfect. All right, so that is done. The only other thing that I had this month, and it wasn't really critical correspondence, was there's a home on Alma Ave that there are new homeowners, and I got kind of an email saying, I've been trying to get in touch with you about a building permit in the Historic District Commission, whatever. So Robert Stewart is holding building permits until they have contact with the HDC, which is good.
Good.
And I called the homeowner and said, she's replacing her asphalt roof with an asphalt roof. So I explained to her that that's technically a repair, and she doesn't need to come to the town hall, and said, we're good, let them have their building permit. So that is working, which is good. I appreciate that. So, all right. So right off the bat, we have Eric Chinberg, preliminary seminary design discussion. So do you want to come up closer, up to that table there, so the mics can pick up your voices?
Here?
Yes. Watch the presentation.
Sure.
Yes, you can. Yeah. Ernie, if you want to come up and watch the presentation up so you can see better, you're welcome to. If you want to come up on this side of the board. Okay? Did he say anything?
He said the property got an extra copy for me. What?
Yeah.
So you want that next week?
Right.
I told Ralph I'd get a copy for him.
Okay.
So he gives his
Stop
back.
it,
You have
yeah.
to make your own extra copies, I think.
Hi, I'm Susan. I'm the one you spoke to on the phone. Hi. Thank you.
Yep. Virginia, and then I'll bring this one.
Thank you.
Sure is for Stanley. Perfect.
You can jump right in, introduce yourself, and jump right in.
Okay.
All
Thank you for having us tonight. I'm Eric Chinberg. This is Paul Goodwin from our office.
right. What's his last name?
Goodwin.
Paul Goodwin. Thank you.
And as you know, we are here to talk about Seymour Seminary and our efforts to work with the town to save the seminary. And as I explained to you on the phone, we had hoped to make this project feasible in order to renovate and save the seminary. We needed some economy of scale, and we thought the old science building could be renovated as it was and make the project work, but try as we might, we could not make the economics work with the large single-story structure that is the high school. The construction costs to do it just simply didn't work. So we have done in a few other communities now, in order to save historic buildings that are relatively small, like the seminary is, we've come up with a program where we've added new structure to it. So right now in Rochester, the old scenic theater is adjacent to a building called the Salinger Block. The two buildings are combined, and the facades are historic and beautiful, but they're only 30, 40 feet deep, and then they had large one-story structures that was the theater in the back, and we couldn't make it work without essentially attaching a four-story building to it. So from the main street, you'll see just the historic buildings. They will have 12 or 14 units in them, residential units, but then we're adding 40 or 50 to the back. We're doing the same thing in Dover right now with the old Stratford County Courthouse. It had an adjacent parking lot, and again, with the current, construction costs, regulatory needs, code, we couldn't make it work just to do the courthouse, so we did a little annex building, a little connector, and then we're building a four-story. So in those cases, they're actually attached. In the case of the Seymour Seminary, it's such a large parcel, and the footprint of the science building is already there and large. We thought to make it work similarly, we would build some new, try to make it blend as best we could, and use that as sort of the economy of scale we need to renovate and save the seminary. So, to that end, we hired an architect that we worked with a lot, has done all of our projects, and came up with what we think is a decent idea. We tried to found the old postcard of the Culford House,
Concord Hall?
Culford Hall. And there's a few of the elements, design elements in this, we tried to sort of mimic. But it's a 4-story building that we try to make read like a 3-story building to the extent possible. And this is our best effort, and we're here to seek your advice and direction.
All right. So, who would like to, do we have any questions?
I'd like to start with one about the seminary building itself. If that wasn't feasible to make it into apartments or whatever, what will you be doing with that?
Well, it's very difficult because in order to do that, it's a relatively small building for the cost that we have to do to create water systems, septic systems, landscaping, paving, all the infrastructure you have to do, whether it's we have like 15 apartments we think will rent in there. Yeah. So 15 apartments is our plan to put into
Okay,
the seminary.
so that will eventually be apartments?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. That would be part of this whole thing. So the seminary would be somewhere in the order of 15 apartments, and the new building would be somewhere in the order of 80 or 90. But we couldn't just demolish the science building and do 15 apartments in the seminary and have it work.
I understand that, okay. I just didn't know what
I'm
you were
sorry,
planning.
I wasn't clear on
Okay.
that. Yeah.
But you were planning to put apartments in the science building anyways.
That was the plan. Yeah.
Right. And quite honestly, there weren't too many of us in town that thought you could do without demolishing that whole structure.
It
Because
turns out you were right.
Well, and you might have had that suspicion anyway. I mean, you've been in this business a long time, you've done enough of these projects, but at the same time, you were probably trying to be, sensitive to the wishes of the town and keeping the site as.
I think, Glenn, that's true. And in the last 2 years since we started this conversation, the construction cost acceleration and scarcity of materials due to COVID has really sort of tipped some things that might have been marginally feasible into not.
The first question that I have is, well, I've got a couple of them. So in total, it will be between 95 and 105 apartments between the two buildings. You said 80 to 90 apartments. That seems a little high since the initial meeting that we had with the selectmen was, I think the total was around 80 apartments. I mean,
Yeah, I don't generally recall exactly what was said there.
Right.
What we're trying to do is we essentially have this new proposed building sit on the footprint of the science building and use that as a massing. That's certainly something that could be negotiable, but we have found that the apartments that we build are relatively small. They're essentially, they do not, to the extent people are concerned about schools and the cost, we have almost zero school children in our apartments. They're generally for people that are either on towards the retirement end of the spectrum or the young folks
just
starting out. So I would argue that to the extent you would like 80, you could consider 80 and consider 100 because it's not going to do anything except bring some younger folks into town.
all right, so not much of it, you wouldn't think there would be much of an impact on our schools or.
We've studied all of the buildings that we've done, and I think we have over 1,500 or 1,600 apartments, and the demographic of our users based on what we build I would say there's not more than 10 school children in all those units.
out of 1,600 people.
Yeah, 1,600
Units.
apartments.
Wow.
You'll typically have a lot more pets than you do.
That may not be such a good idea, really,
Well, we've
but,
learned to make everything pet friendly because everyone wants pets.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Especially since COVID. The other question I had is that in our rules and regs for Kingston, the maximum building height is 35 feet. So how tall is this proposed building?
Taller than that.
Taller than
And
35
so
feet?
we recognize that would require what we think is a waiver from this board
not necessarily in the zoning language itself. So it's this interesting structure. So my understanding was that it would be
Glenn's gonna look
way
at it.
from the
The experts right here.
Yes.
You may need for both.
Yeah.
If there's height requirements in the HDC, and I'm not as versed in the regs as Glenn is, but
Well,
as well versed as Glenn.
well, and without, I really shouldn't speak before I look it up, but I mean, my gut reaction would have been that a variance is required, but I mean, we'll look into it.
Yes, and either way, we would need to ask for whatever relief is necessary to add that.
So is there any possibility that you would scale down the size, the height of the building? Or are you married to?
It's more likely we would want to shrink the footprint of it.
Mhm.
And, because our plan here is to have parking underneath the building.
I see.
Oh, so that's how you get the required spaces, because I'm looking at the outside spaces and thinking, wow.
Well, the other thing is, from what we can understand, is that your parking requirements are pretty, like, they haven't been changed in a long time, and they're essentially not doable. I mean, I think it's like even a studio apartment needs
Two spaces.
per studio. And again, if that is, that would be something that we have all this data now that all of our residential properties, we can put 1.5 spaces per unit here. We have 1.2 spaces per apartment in our portfolio, and it works fine. So our goal is to keep more green space, have less pavement, put parking underneath, but not create these massive, when you drive by shopping plazas these days, and you just see seas of pavement that are never used because parking requirements were out of whack with actual need. So I don't know that would probably be another, I don't know if that's a waiver or a variance on the parking issue.
We'll have to figure that out as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm not remembering that one off the top of my head.
Glenn, the scale, issue is on 1201-8.
That's regs, is it?
That's regs,
Yeah.
yes.
That's for the HDC.
I didn't see it in ordinance when I read
No, it's
through
not,
it.
it's not in ordinance, which means that it probably wouldn't be a variance then.
Which one is that?
The height.
Building height.
Well, I think we have to look at apartments aren't even allowed, so that would need a variance as well.
Apartments in the HDC.
Apartments.
Wouldn't they just be considered residents?
I don't think they're prohibited.
You're not prohibited.
No.
No.
There are lots of apartments in.
That was our other question, was that I didn't see any language in there that explicitly said multifamily or apartments,
Yeah.
but residence is in there, and I don't see
Yeah.
any language excluding.
Yeah.
So to me, residence is a really broad term, but that was a clarification we had
So we have to
for you guys as well.
Yeah.
So
You're
I'm
giving
giving,
us homework to do.
yeah,
How high is the building, the new building? I
I
know it's lower than the seminary building.
It's lower than the seminary building.
Right, you can tell that.
Between 50 and 55. So
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Between 50 and 55 feet would be the.
I did talk to the fire chief about that, because that would be the issue, not having a ladder truck in town. And, he didn't seem to think it was gonna be too much of a problem.
Yeah, we would have to fully sprinkle the building.
Correct,
So,
correct. So I mean, those are the things that would go down through the planning board and all that and stuff. But
Yeah.
he didn't see a real problem. And when we get down to the real nitty gritty, he'll weigh in
Okay.
individually on that with any recommendations.
The town is really unique in that this board has much more like sort of governing power and authority than most communities, and so this is obviously the first step. And you've hit on the threshold issues: height, parking, scale,
use.
right, and so.
well, I'm gonna throw a cog in. I see this as something that would fit into Rochester, because Rochester and Dover are more city-like, and Kingston is more of a rural residential. And I see this as kind of like a white albatross sitting next to the seminary, and I see an apartment building like this kind of being built just about anywhere in the United States, not just not in a historic district. So I see some pretty details up at the top, but it's so tall, I think that's going to be lost on that parcel. So that's a big cog. But I also think that the parcel is so big that you can think out of the box, because we used to have Gilman Cottage that sat toward the front, the headmaster's house. Maybe it's not so tall in the back where you build up on the old science building, but maybe we could put something up front. There were two buildings up front that could come back toward and make it more of a campus again, instead of just, this mammoth white building across the back. So that's my first impression.
Well, could you envision anything that could be done architecturally to this building that would make it
So huge. It's so huge. I'm looking for the detail, and the detail doesn't come up until the roof, where those beautiful, what are those brackets up under the roof? Buttresses.
That's
Something
what
like that, yeah. I'm just
those
thinking,
horrible.
I mean, I know you do beautiful work. I've seen your mill buildings, and they're just gorgeous. I kind of pictured you doing something maybe more brick across you had the option to tie the brick in, because you've got the seminary, you've got the gym, but the old Concord Hall and Gilman Cottage, those were all cottage white wooden
white
structures
letters.
like this. But if we brought down the scale and maybe just added some more to the front, maybe you could still get density and detail to make it like really fit into a tiny rural town like Kingston, and not, I could see this in Rochester,
Where they already have large structures
where they
like
have
mills and.
large
yeah.
scale buildings.
We don't have
This
mills.
is it's so different than anything in town. Even the assisted living that just came in is only 2 floors.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those are a lot of old people in there.
I know, but they're nice people.
Well, I'm sure they are, I didn't say they
Yeah.
weren't nice.
Yeah, but it fits more in keeping with the town of Kingston.
The scale of it.
The scale of it, the porches on it, the details on it, for such a large building.
So we do a lot of discussion when people are putting up a new home, about and making changes. The word streetscape comes to mind. What does it look like as you drive through the historic District 1? It is a mixed use. When I heard you were going to do apartments there, which would make it economically feasible to do, that didn't bother me. We have a big building here of the town hall. Certainly, the seminary building is a big, massive structure. And so there are a variety of larger buildings. But in general, we have not a massive feeling to the streetscape. And so these feel very massive to me as I would drive into town and see individual houses. Some of them are very big, very tall, but it's the massing that bothers me, as if there could be some way to break that up so we didn't have this big wall of building feeling. I don't know if it's just the height. I think it's the massiveness of the structures.
Well, I mean, the challenge that we have is working in a community where rents aren't as high as Dover or Rochester. We're trying to make a building look nicer, or as nice as we can build there. As soon as you lower it, your cost per unit goes this in Exeter, across from the Exeter Mills, we built 2 4-story buildings with a shared sort of driveway and then parking underneath. But again, we could certainly look at that and see. The economics of that are more challenging, but maybe not impossible. But I don't necessarily want to chase our tail. Like if you know that there's no way this board's going to approve either something this long or 4 stories, then you probably have a problem. And as far as the streetscape goes, I feel like this is so unique. It's a campus. It's hundreds of feet off the road. I don't feel like it's something that you drive by and you'll feel like you're overwhelmed by it because it's so far away. It's a very subjective thing.
Yeah, it is.
Ken, I have a question here. I agree this is very massive. I don't know how long this is from the Seminary Building to the Swayze Gym. Looks like it's over 200 or 300 feet.
It's roughly
280.
280. Can this building be cut in half so you have 2 buildings instead of one massive building?
That is a possibility, and I think that I would need to get at whether this board would object to 4 stories no matter what. Because if you said, look, if you make it look nice and try to make it look, we tried hard to bring the roof lines in and lower the look of it, but if the board would be supportive of 4 stories that looks kind of like this, but break it in half and do 2 of these, then we could definitely go and look at that. If you said break it in half and make it 3 stories each, I know it would. So it seems to me like we either have to choose height or length from our perspective to make it work.
I think this is out of symmetry. I mean, that's why you'd have to break it in half.
Because I'm sorry, why?
I think this is out of symmetry. So you
Our symmetry, yeah.
would you agree to that? I think it would be better if it was one building going towards the Seminary Building and the other building going towards Swayze Gym. And then there'd be enough room for maybe some parking on the sides. You don't see a massive parking in the front.
How does this compare to the Chestnut Street property? I mean, I know there's 2 buildings there. Is
Yeah,
this,
there are
how many in each building?
48 units per building, so
Okay,
it's
so
not the
it's
same
comparable,
size.
but split into 2 buildings.
Split into 2, yeah. I mean, so if we could get some guidance from this board tonight as it relates to height versus mass, then we could go back to the drawing board.
Well, I, for one, would like to see it to 3 stories. I think it's just too high. It almost dwarfs the gymnasium and the seminary building. The seminary building is one of the highest in the town, if not the highest building in the town.
I would guess
It's,
so.
in my opinion, it's too tall and too massive, so,
Well, I disagree with my colleagues. I think you gotta think, I want you to think outside the box a little bit, because if this particular project doesn't fly, you don't know what we're gonna get. And if you think that the height on something like this is too much, you could get something that raises everything straight across and have 2-story, and we won't have any control over it.
yeah, I see your point.
You see what I'm saying? At least here, we're maintaining the seminary building, and you gotta keep that as a focal point, that Mr. Chinberg and his organization is gonna invest quite a bit in maintaining that building that we cherish. The science building does not have the same relative value, in my opinion, as that seminary building is. And so we have a noteworthy developer who's got a good reputation for dealing with historic buildings of this magnitude, and there aren't too many buildings like that.
Oh, that's not even questionable. We know how good you
By the
are.
same token, he has a right to get a return on his investment as well.
Right.
So we need to come up with a plan that meets his needs and ours.
Right.
And if, I could see, it's a big building, I think it looks beautiful, that's my personal opinion. But I also like the Chestnut Street property, which has two buildings. If it's the same number of units with a small driveway in between, that could work. You have, it sits way back, and if you look at it from the Church Street side, looking at it, I still think it has a lot of beauty to the property that we wouldn't have otherwise. And one of the problems we have as a community, and we're aging, we don't have affordable housing for young people to stay in town. We don't have that. Your kids graduate from college, and where do they go? Anywhere but Kingston. And so this is one way to keep more young people locally, which really revitalizes the economy. And when you look at what's happening on 125 with the warehouse coming through, with the Kingston Commons coming through, there's a lot of growth and development, and we're in a position here to manage that growth. And I don't want us to lose sight of that. That's all I ask.
And I don't want to lose sight of that either. We've been looking forever to how could we save the seminary building?
Exactly.
How could we make what we have for a beautiful piece of land right in the center of our town work for our town? We're looking to have Main Street grow and revitalize instead of the storefronts empty. There's just, no doubt about that. I understand that if you did two buildings instead of one, you need two elevators and two of this and that. I do understand that. Is there any way to utilize, let's see, to the west, am I looking? If I'm looking at the building and I'm holding it so that I'm looking at Main Street, as you go towards Cottage Street, I guess that's west, there's a large chunk of green land there that I assume is part of your property. Could half be where it is and half be over to the west there along that property line?
Can you just hold up your sheet and point around what you're talking about?
Unlikely due to wetland buffers. There's some wetlands over there.
Yes, there are.
So,
I mean, it's possible it could go. Well, one advantage that the Chestnut Street model in Exeter that was referenced is you're absolutely right. I mean, we broke a building in two, separated by 80 or 100 feet, and we went driveway servicing both underground garages. I don't know if the topo here would work for that, but we can try to figure it out. That's a model that worked there, and we can try to make it work here again. We do have the advantage of Exeter. It's just generally people pay higher rents there than they're going to pay here, and that's one thing we're very aware of. But I love the vision of getting people. If you end up with 80 or 100 units here, the type of people that rent our apartments, to the extent there are empty storefronts, I'm guessing there will be fewer of them after that because there's going to be more demand for them.
Yes. Yes.
And so there is this trade-off. You've got to, you're wearing the hat of preserving the heritage and the history of your town, and yet you're the gatekeeper for these projects. And there's others that are looking at, wearing the economic development hat, and it's a trade-off that has to be made.
Are you required to keep the technology building? Is that part of what you need to do? It's towards the Church Street end of the property. I see that it's on here in brown.
Yeah.
No, we ultimately will be acquiring those, but the town is maintaining control of them through a $1 a year lease for 3 or 5 years.
School is.
The school, sorry. So we will end up with those eventually, but I think the school has a right to them for several years.
So that's not buildable there for you?
Not at this time.
Initially.
Initially, correct.
How many years? We can help move them along, That's not hard to do. I mean,
Right.
you get it.
Yeah, I think they have like an absolute, lease for 1 or 2 years, and then they have the unilateral ability to extend it to up to 5 or something. I can look. It's in the P&S.
Okay, yeah. But I don't see that as a hindrance to use of that
No, we're
property.
just assuming it's not part of the development right now.
Correct, initially.
Right.
I would also say, just one of the things that we've talked about internally while developing this plan in regard to those two buildings, you'll notice the outline of the proposed building is pulled slightly back from the main driveway to the seminary because the science building actually encroaches a bit on your sort of tree line vista, or what once was a tree line vista from Church Street, and that's something that we would be looking to restore that vista much as the front side from Main Street has
Which is
today.
this view here. Yeah.
Correct. So the technology buildings, maybe years from now can provide, once vacated, an opportunity to develop, but again, you probably want to pull anything built there back from that drive so you maintain that sort of unobstructed view from Church Street, which I think is very valuable. And then I think we're also running into wetland buffer issues again there. A lot of these sort of plan north on this is what has the little patches of wetland that you know, could be problematic.
Yeah, but I don't see the IT buildings being an issue because they just need to move it out. They have room. But trust me.
When they leave, we'll come up back to you guys with some, hopefully, great idea of something to either repurpose them or put something else there. But it's really not something that we can consider now because we don't have a
Right.
high school.
Right.
Do have one question. The bottom floor, the first floor here, ground floor, is that apartments or is that parking disguised as apartments?
Which view is that?
That's still the Church
Just
Street.
well, whichever one.
There's
the
a,
bottom.
there's a number, there's a sheet number.
Number 2.
Number 2, page 2.
At the bottom.
Yeah.
Those are apartments as well. There will be ground floor
When
apartments.
we do underground parking, we try to get the grade up as high as we can so you don't see a lot of foundation. So we didn't do a rendering of the back side that would have to drive into the garage.
So my question, I guess, is there are four floors of apartments. Not one of those four stories is not parking.
Correct.
Correct. So there's 4 stories and a
And
one-story
okay,
parking
that was what I was
area.
asking.
Yes.
Okay. So roughly how many apartments are on each floor then? If there's 80 apartments, 20, 25?
Roughly 20.
Yeah, 2022. We haven't, it's just sort of generally masked right now. We just try to mimic the general footprint of the science building.
I
We
get
don't know exactly that count.
The other one other thing that Madeline had suggested was that, now this is Main Street here, so you're looking up the driveway to the seminary. Here's the gymnasium, here's the big building. There used to be 2 or 3 buildings in here,
Right up to the road.
right up to there.
Right up to the road, yeah.
So is that a buildable area? Is that something to consider?
We're going to have to build a massive community leach field. And
Oh, okay.
the soils, I believe, have we determined has to be in that hatched area pretty much?
That hatched area is where the existing one is, and it makes a lot of sense to reutilize when a new field goes in, reutilize that area, and you need to expand, obviously. So the open space is one of the reasons the seminary is so striking, so we want to maintain as much of that open space around the building as we can to allow it to breathe, but we also need that area for a leach field, and that leach field needs to be a fair distance from the well also.
Okay, that's true. Thank you.
And don't forget, we have that inherent swimming pool in front of the tennis courts.
So my question about the leach field there is that, because that is a very wet area, when we have a lot of rain, it becomes a swimming pool. Would that have to be a high raised bed, or don't you know that yet?
I don't think we know that yet.
It's in front of the
I
tennis-
actually
it's
heard
in-
from our initial results from talking to folks is that the soils rate very well here. So it's interesting to hear that you have contact.
Well, you know what?
It's not where it is,
It's in front of the
though. You know
tennis
what?
court.
It's here in
I'm
front of
wrong. I'm wrong.
It's
I
right in
take
front
it
of
all
the tennis
back.
courts.
The swimming pool is in front of the tennis
It's-
court, between the tennis court and the road.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries.
Our soils person said that they thought that was really good soils there, where we've indicated that hash mark.
Okay.
So,
But to Virginia's point, if that had to be a raised system and it was significantly raised, I mean, there goes a whole different feel of the property from the Main Street side anyway.
Absolutely.
Or at least it would be a contributing factor to it, so.
yeah, I mean, that would be something that would be a challenge, I mean, because with everything to the north and west is wet, so this is the highest, driest land. You know, another potential building site down the road could be where the tennis courts are. I mean, the fact that it's wet doesn't mean you can't put up a building there. But, yeah, so, I mean, I guess we don't need to have your answer tonight. You may want to talk about this and let us know, but I guess we sort of need to know if you want the building shrunk and less tall, I think we have a problem. If you want one or the other, then I think we could come up with another plan. And so I guess I would sort of leave that for you folks to talk about, you know, when we don't have to be here for that.
Right.
So my opinion is that I would like to figure out some way to make this work with you and us, because I think this is the best deal we're gonna get on this piece of property that has been an albatross since the high school left there. And so I'm gonna work to make it work, because I think that's really important for all the things that Ellie said, but for having lived in this town a lot of years. That was always the question, Lena. Such an important building. Nobody really liked the science building, it was just there. But what are we going to do? How would we ever preserve it? And it's got to have something more than 15 apartments in it to make it economically feasible. Maybe one of the things that would satisfy me, besides going a little lower, is a different color.
Oh, colors are easy.
So it seems so bright and white to me compared to the brick.
We had the old postcard, the Calkert house or whatever, and we sort of mimicked those colors.
It was
It's in that old postcard.
It was white, it was a white.
Yeah.
I know, but it was a
It was
colonial building, it wasn't a long apartment building. I think,
And the
Well,
science
but
building
if
is
you
how.
keep this size and this height and change the color, that would really.
I think if you split the two buildings
That's an
and leave
interesting
the height, that's where I would go. But I don't have objection, I understand the massive site, but,
I really do feel like this is something that this board would want us to discuss. I mean, I think we're fairly clear that it doesn't result in trouble if you just say, all right, keep it this big and take the floor off. We'll try to make it work with a pro forma that a bank will lend us on. Or keep them that height, do Chestnut Street, separate them. And I guess I would leave that to you folks to consider and let us know. I'm assuming that if we get by these issues of this size of this thing, that we would then work with you and figure out, you know, density and housing and parking and all that stuff. So this is the main issue, this
Yes,
massive
yeah.
issue right now.
yes.
So Madeline just pulled up the 1910 photo of the seminary building
Which you've probably
showing
seen.
Culprit Hall. Have you seen that as
Yeah.
well? So, which was a 3-story building.
Right, and you notice in the front facade of that, we tried to.
Yes, yeah.
We
Yeah.
just sort of, yeah. Get it back, refresh my memory. Yeah, you see how we.
Yeah, yeah.
Tried to do that. Sorry.
I just felt like it was so lost because it's up so high. That's where my only,
and I'm betting that when you see it for real, it won't seem as high, because it's not as tall as a seminary building.
Yeah.
You can tell that by the roof line.
Yeah, seminary is 65 plus.
Yeah, and
It's
that's only
quite a
50.
bit taller.
So it's not that much higher than they're allowed 35 feet. You know, it's not like it's 70 or 80 feet. So proportionally, it really won't be as high as it might seem from here.
Glenn was going to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see
That's
that.
all right.
I mean, I have lots of thoughts about this, and I agree with almost every statement. What you said, Eric, about, you know, we should be, you know, kibitzing amongst ourselves and getting back to you. I think you're going to be, I'm not sure that we would, as a group, come to a consensus. So, I mean, we could try, but I don't know that we would necessarily. So the opportunity for you to kind of take it all in from what you're hearing and then
Well, I guess if that were the case, I would want to poll the members and say, who's more concerned about height, who's more concerned about length, because I don't want to like do two new designs.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and, I mean, we can do that, of course, it's non-binding, but we can do
Right.
that. But just so that I get my perspective out here, I agree that however we can come up with the best solution for this with you and your team is what we need to do for Kingston. This site needs to be developed in a good way, a sensitive way, and I mean, you've stepped up to the plate, and I think that you'll be able to do that. I think I'd be happier with a 3-story as opposed to 4, and whether it's in one building or 2, I don't know, but I think that it would leave the seminary being more prominent on the site than it looks now with the 4-story structure. I also agree with the color. If it could be softened or made more complementary with perhaps the seminary might be nice. And I've got to tell you that I mean I like the fact that you've incorporated a lot of elements into from the old Calder house, and maybe the fact that it's 4 stories kind of makes it look more hotel-like. I mean that's what I see when I look at this, and maybe when it's down to 3 stories, it doesn't look like so much that way, and maybe if it were a different color, it wouldn't look that way. But
well, I saw Ed's nodding, and if that, I mean, I'm happy to, we can run numbers and take that into account and come up with a rendering of a building kind of this size but shorter, with 3 stories, and then we can just run our numbers and see if it works.
Eric, what kind of investment would it be for you not to make these really sophisticated final plans, but ink line drawing, or a simple pencil drawing for us to see 2 buildings versus 3 stories? In other words, don't invest a lot in the detail here, but
Just
kind of give us,
mapping.
yes.
It'd be more affordable. I mean, we can certainly, the easiest way to do that would just be on the site plan. You wouldn't necessarily see a perspective, but there's more cost-effective ways to do perspectives as well.
Yeah, I mean, what we could do is, do I get the sense that the preference is what Glenn just stated, just lower it, but you kind of want to see what it would look like if we split it?
Yes.
But I'm not going to bring a rendering that's split and 3 stories. It would be split and 4 stories versus one building and 3 stories.
Okay,
So
That's
fair.
that's noted.
okay, that's clear.
And so I'm starting to, maybe buy into, after re-seeing the Calder house, happy to show the 4, but again, I just, the economics of this is still marginal, how things work through the cost of things today. So, we weigh this stuff like, if you split the buildings and keep it 4 stories, you have extra costs on elevators and stairs and site work. But if you keep it 1 building and lower it, you only have 1 elevator and 2 sets of stairs, but you don't have the economies of 1 floor easily sandwiched between an already existing roof and foundation. So they might balance out, I don't really know. But I think I like the feel of trying to make this building with softer colors and 1 story lower would be maybe my first choice of our effort.
Okay.
And
If I may ask, when I hear the color comment, curious what you think is a softer color. We did actually look at an option with brick, and we did not go down that path because we thought it competed with the seminary. Well, this is perhaps too contrasting. It allowed the seminary to stand out. So that's sort of one of the reasons why we leaned into the Concord Hall sort of color palette here. So I'm just curious what your interpretation of a softer color would be.
I feel like if where the gymnasium is brick on the face and the seminary is brick, if you did too much brick, if you brought in brick accents on the apartment building, you might give a nod to the other 2 buildings, but I think 3 brick buildings would be way too much.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be nice.
so what about like color palettes, just like darker color?
I'm thinking dark, that when I said softer, I mean darker, something not quite
Yes.
stark. It looks white to me now, although it's probably not white, it's probably.
Kind of beige,
something
yeah.
maybe darker.
Yeah, I like that you gave it the Concord Hall color, because that pulls into everything, but then it's just so massive, it's just like,
Right.
so, but I don't know what to suggest. I don't know.
Well, I think we can take this back to Carla, our architect, and,
I mean, dropping a color onto the.
That's easy,
That's easy.
that's the easy thing,
And
yeah.
do you generally like if we just removed one of the say, the second floor, do you generally like the way the roof works and looks? Because if we just took a floor out and left the roof like that, it's gonna read more like a 2.5-story building.
Personally, I have less of an issue with the roof than I do with the.
Mass of the
that
wall.
large face.
Yeah.
I hear you guys. I think that, why don't we just try that? Why don't we try a different color and just keep it the same size for now and just take the floor out? And shoot it back to you.
I mean, we certainly understand your position about having to make the numbers work, because, I mean, you can't do this project if the numbers don't work, it's just the way it is.
As a municipality, we couldn't make it work, so
Yeah.
it might not be as creative as you guys. I think it's very clear that this board wants to work with you.
And you know, let's say if we run these numbers and it's marginal, we might start thinking a little more about getting some thoughts from you about developing something later where the tennis courts are or where the maintenance buildings are. What do you call those buildings?
IT.
IT buildings.
Yeah.
Because that might be the thing that maybe we would fold that into this phase if this got on the edge. And I don't know to what extent the school really wants those buildings. We didn't really care at the time, so they said, well, we'll just keep them, so, for now. So-
I was even gonna suggest, changing the entrance going into the Sanborn Seminary from Main Street into like a walkway, which would keep that entrance still, it's narrower, and it would give you more space to build out on either side, if that was a possibility for you too. I mean, you could really think out of the box with that huge campus.
Yeah.
Make it
Fit
maybe-
other structures.
I mean,
Yeah, make it
it's
up
kind
for-
of a planning and traffic issue, but I don't see, I mean, there's 3 curb cuts on this parcel, it's like,
Yeah,
plenty.
yeah. So I was
So
thinking.
that's an interesting idea because, yeah.
Or even if you thought about, if you were willing to split the large apartment building to, you've got the seminary as the base of that campus, make it more like a village green type of a, I know,
Yeah.
you know, with other, like more of a historic
Right, yeah.
feel to it, as like a village green would have if you went into, I don't know, Nantucket or Salem or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much there.
But obviously,
Stuff around.
you couldn't have like 4 smaller 4-story buildings.
That gets.
No, that
It
would
would
be
be,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be too much, but that would be kind of way out of the box too.
Yeah.
So, but if we did that, I mean, that's kind of a neat idea, but I just don't know if we can make it work if we split it, like and put it in 2 different areas and lower it.
Yeah,
I just don't know.
yeah.
I wonder, based on this conversation, and just spitballing here, would an L-shaped building, so if we cut this thing in half, but bent the corner around, so you're not seeing one elevation, so we're getting the economies we need in the one building, but you're not seeing it all in one.
Would it go toward the back of the property? How would that?
We would have to figure that out.
Yeah, yeah, that's another idea.
That's an excellent
You
idea.
almost want to fold it in front of the seminary.
Yep, that's an excellent idea. Then you wouldn't see the big wall of, you know, the width of it.
Yeah, and one of the strategies I've used on other projects we have legs, if needed, is you can treat the legs almost from the color palette perspective as different buildings to help break that even more, right? So you
Yes.
can kind of pretend that one wing is one building, one wing is another building, even though they are one building, you're just using color to sort of differentiate.
Yeah,
It doesn't look as massive.
yeah, if you could fit that on your, you'd have to move your parking spaces or something, you know?
Right. Or maybe it could come down towards the tech
To the back.
buildings.
Yeah, yeah, toward the back.
Yep.
Don't let the tech buildings impede
Yeah.
your thought process. Trust me on that one. It's easier to leave things where they are than to move, just saying.
So your wetlands are on your western border.
Northwest.
It's northwest.
Yeah, right.
I know, because I live there. Your property abuts my property. And I know it's wet, and I
Are you gonna
know,
be one of those abutters during our planning board meeting?
Oh, that's interesting. Are you gonna butter to this parcel?
No, you're talking about the field. You're
I own
to the
property
field.
in
You're not,
Kingston.
you're not a butter to
Yeah, the
this.
Carriage Town News Building.
You're just to the fields.
so,
Is that across the street?
Across the street, yeah.
Directly?
And not sure how it works.
actually, I am a butter to it.
Just to the
I
fields.
think, I
No,
don't
my
think.
property goes over to the corner where the road goes, do you walk all the way up to the, into the seminary building from the back?
Is she?
But I'm not gonna be voting.
Just a minute, guys.
We recently completed a 92-unit building in downtown Portsmouth. It's very modern looking, but it's not a right angle, it's kind of a back wing. But it does, and we didn't change the colors or anything, but it's in this quadrant right here.
Oh, yes.
So that's, again, modern looking, could be in Denver, but it does change the scale a little bit because it's right here, because it's,
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
it's kind of a, I don't know what the angle is, it's kind of like a bat wing, or like a boomerang. Chevron, yeah.
Yeah, obviously, if that were all in a straight line, it would have much more visual impact. Mass.
Yeah, unfortunately, that didn't matter, we just had to fit it on the site that short.
Yeah.
So,
Just a couple of things that I was looking up. I couldn't find the building height in the zoning now, unless I'm missing it. It appears to be in regs, which means it would be a waiver request.
that was what we thought.
That's what, yeah, we have.
And parking will be handled when you get to planning board, and the planning board has discretion to discuss with you parking. So
Perfect, so what would be, where would we need a variance then on any, so far nothing that we've talked about?
and not that I'm aware of.
Because that's always the highest hurdle,
Mm.
obviously. Well, I hear you, so why don't we, go back to the drawing board? Overall, architecturally, other than the height and, you know, the color, is the direction okay? I think it looks great, it's color housey, it's not trying to compete with the gym or the Sanborn Seminary.
I like the angles of the roof.
All right,
I know, I like the buttresses or the brackets that
Yeah,
you
the
got under
corbels,
the
or the
roof.
corbels or something, I don't know.
and
Those are nice.
we've really, made it a goal to have all our projects like this have, every unit have a balcony, right, or a patio, it's just such a nice feature, so, and I think it adds architectural interest as well. So, I think what we'll do is we'll come back with a 3-story version showing one kind of in this long linear thing, and then we'll try to come up with some sort of either bent one or campus feel that
Yeah,
might
campus
work.
feel sounds really nice.
And we'll just get something back to you.
And you're gonna work on a possibility for set 3 units.
But I'm just gonna only suggest 3 stories at this point, because I think that everyone's pretty opposed to the height. So, it'll be hard to separate, but this idea of doing a potential wing that makes, it's still only one elevator, but it makes it look, you know, more campusy or different, that's appealing.
Is there any way you can do, you know how camp colleges have the bridges that connect buildings, they make it really cool, I don't know if that's even,
It can.
I
but
don't even know,
Stuff is so.
it's just a connector, but it's just open space, but it's connected,
I mean,
Nice thought.
we're gonna come back with something that's kind of linear, that's 3 stories, and something that's bent in 3 stories.
Okay.
And see what we can come up with there.
And keep in mind, there's still other property, like go in the front, there's still, there used to be buildings right up to the front of
Yeah.
Main Street.
But
There has
but
to be.
separate buildings will cost more money.
But,
too.
Yeah.
Maddie, I think putting a tall building
Not a
in-
tall, but maybe it could be a shorter, so I don't know.
You could be
Something-
detracting from the seminary though.
I think so too.
I can see us coming back and later where that tennis court is and proposing something, maybe even a couple of small single-family cottage homes.
Yes,
you
that
know,
would be
Just
darling.
to help with the
We
project.
clearly have a big enough parcel that
Yes.
you've got some potential.
Yeah.
And we wanna work with you.
I think
Well,
that, I
we're-
think the puddle, it in front of the tennis court would not be a problem. I don't think it's considered part of the wetland.
That's
It's
gotta be
just
a
low-
drainage issue.
It's
That's
just a low place.
place.
They
That's a
filled it
drainage
in
issue.
to make the tennis court.
Yeah.
Nobody really
Yeah.
does much with the tennis court. That
Yeah,
could be
those-
gone
no,
quite
those-
easily.
They have seen better days long ago.
Yes.
Just-
I'm sorry, Stanley, I interrupted you.
Okay, I have another idea. Can this be formed like a patio? Like a square, like, there's a Boston Public Library. It's buildings on all four, like a square, and then in the middle is a
Like a
patio.
courtyard.
Kind of a courtyard, I think that concept is interesting and, one that we'll think about, especially as it relates to possibly bending the building.
Because it looks so huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we get that, I think that we're gonna,
Is there enough depth to make it like a courtyard in the middle?
I think so, I think we'll talk about that. Well, unless you have other questions for us, I think that gives us some guidance.
Okay.
I was just asking if it, so it's a public meeting,
It's
so
a
I
public meeting, so
didn't know if Ernie had anything he wanted to contribute.
Not yet anyways.
he said no thank you. You're all set? Okay. Thanks, Ernie. Well, we appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having us, and,
If any of us comes up with any brilliant revelatory thoughts, I will email, who should I email with our?
email me and then
email
I'll
you?
link call in quickly,
Okay.
and then,
Okay,
but we'll take these comments and
Okay.
meet with our architect in the next few days.
Perfect.
And, see if she can come up with some ideas that would make everybody happy.
our next meeting is December 15th.
Okay.
I think that's a Wednesday. Is it a Tuesday or Wednesday?
Oh,
I have that right here.
Oh,
probably a
Change
Wednesday.
that, yeah.
All right, well, we'll be in touch with you.
Okay, yeah, you can email me. It's Wednesday, December 15th is our next meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
definitely. And how much notice do we need to give to?
For just a conversation like
Yeah,
this,
continue this
don't,
conversation.
just as long as I can get copies to everybody.
Okay.
So just call me the week before. Is that okay with you guys all?
Yeah,
Yeah?
that's good, yeah.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, and just a point of information for meetings like this, the advance notice isn't a
That's
big
good.
deal.
Not a big deal.
But when you come to do a formal submittal or final, it'll be a public hearing, and then of course it'll have the same as planning board notice, it'll be, 10 clear days, and it'll be advertised and filed.
Yes.
So my goal will be to get you something for that December 15th meeting that you folks will hopefully get behind and say, look, we can tweak this a little bit, but I know we're gonna get behind it, because I have to close on the property by the end of December.
Okay, all right.
So if we have if we know that one of the options that we bring forward works financially, and hoping that you can say, look, yeah, with some tweaks, we're gonna get behind this, then I'll go ahead and close on the property.
Okay,
Good.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Okay.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
All right, good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Probably by end of December.
That's good. We can do this. We can do this. And then the school district will go to town in March.
I do want to do
And then
this.
you can tell the school, get your stuff off.
I exactly, don't you worry.
Get it off. That's right.
We can get
That's
rid
an
of
easy,
that.
easy.
All that interesting roof detail
It really is beautiful.
it'll show up much better without
Yes.
those floors gone.
Yes.
It'll look more like copper.
It will look more like coffee, yeah.
Take
It's just
a look,
gonna-
though.
This is what I was doing. I was just holding my page up like that.
Oh, I folded mine in half.
That. But I do like this band here, but I don't know that they need it on.
Well, it's,
three
that's,
stories.
the first floor will stay, it's gonna be the second or third that will go.
Yeah, I would leave that
Right.
there.
So it's kind of like the frosting on the cake right now, but if you lower take
Yeah.
one layer off the cake, it's going to blend in much better.
I think so.
And take a ride out to Exeter and go and look at the Chestnut Street. It's right behind, you know where String Street is, the library, the Exeter Library?
Yes.
String Bridge, yeah, go through String Bridge and when you pass the library, take a left. And Chestnut Street, it's 27 Chestnut Street.
I wrote that down, and I was gonna ask
I
if
have
anybody
I
knows.
have a couple of friends that live there, which is why I'm familiar with the property.
Okay.
And
I
it
love
is
the
street
condos
level.
that they just did right by Sea Dog.
Oh, yes, oh, yeah. They're doing some very creative things.
I went on their website today and looked at other properties that they were doing as a a school up on the hill that they
Yeah.
redid. I mean, they've done some beautiful work.
Which is why we want him. You
Yes.
know, I mean, we really need someone like
Yes,
Mr.
I
Chadwick
totally agree.
to work with us, because we'll get something beautiful for the
Yeah.
center of town, which is
Yeah.
what we want. And he'll be able to make some money too. He's gotta have a.
He's not a charity.
No,
Yeah.
exactly not,
Yeah.
exactly not. And that, we can't afford to do it as a community,
Yeah.
to raise the kind of money, or have the expertise, where he's got a team of people that he's, and with experience doing this.
Although, with the new, plaza that's gonna come in, they might be able to up those prices. Make it even more.
I wouldn't doubt that at all.
Yeah.
Try and rent something in Kingston now,
I know.
this is pretty expensive as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole housing situation right
It's
now,
crazy.
something like this would really diversify our housing stock.
Yep.
Exactly, exactly. And give people more opportunities to stay here.
Oh, yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's important. When you, over the years through the Exeter Chamber, we had an opportunity to hear Peter Francesi, who's an economist, and he talks about the makeup of a community, the types of people, age groups, young people with families, middle-aged with kids in college, and seniors like myself. And it needs that, we need the diversity in order to maintain a viable community. If we keep aging the way we're doing now in New Hampshire in general, that's going to present a real problem. It's why we have declining enrollment in schools, because our young people can't afford to stay in town, or there isn't a house they could buy and raise a couple of kids.
So when we did our Envision Kingston 2, we talked about what we had lost in the center of town. We lost the high school, so the young people weren't walking across the street and going into the corner store.
Exactly
Okay?
correct.
We lost the library, so
Yeah.
Bakey School kids weren't walking down the street into the library. It just kept going out and out and out.
Right.
That's one of the reasons, not that there's a lot of business related to the fire station, but that's why I'm glad we kept the fire station in the
Yeah.
town. I didn't want to move everything out of the town.
Right.
We need to bring things into the center of town.
Right.
We have this vision of a sidewalk and walking down the middle of the plains and
Around
public
the
bathrooms, I'm always saying.
And, but
public
around the
restrooms.
plains and around the seminary
Yes.
property and that loop around Cottage Street, back down
Yes.
Church, we talked about that extensively
Yeah.
in Vision Kingston.
Yes.
And this would lend itself right into that.
Right, but every time our stumbling block, our wall
We're
was, what do we
getting-
do with the seminary properties?
Yeah.
So here's an opportunity to
yes,
do
But
something.
the seminary property was key to realizing in Vision 2.
That's right.
It really was a key piece of the whole proposal.
Yes.
And with this opportunity, I think we're going someplace. The Kingston is changing. We're not going to be as small for the next 50 years or 25 years as we've been. And so this is a time for us as a community to have a little vision and plan out what we want. And if we keep that in the back of our minds, our downtown will not suffer like other major communities where it became wasteland and empty buildings and deteriorated properties.
Right.
We don't want that. So we keep working with someone like Mr. Chidwick, and we develop the northern part of 125. We're gonna be okay.
If anybody can do it, he can do
And
it.
I totally agree
He
with
can
you.
do it.
He can do
Yeah,
it.
he can.
We need to work with him for both sides to be happy.
Yes.
And that's
So
important.
just, I wasn't kidding when I said if anyone has any brilliant insight,
Okay.
email it to me and I will forward it on in the next few days. So that when they
Right.
start their changes,
Right,
you know, but if you have any, if something wakes you up in the night and you go, ding,
So I have something more to say about Concord Hall.
okay.
I thought it was really ugly.
I told inside and out.
Inside and out. So Gilmore Cottage was a little New
It was
England house.
cottages. Yep, it was.
Had a little more charm. to it.
Yes.
It had
was
more
way
charm, and so
The headmaster's house
the headmaster's house,
and their little garage. the
yes,
cute little-
yes, all that. But I thought Concord Hall was not attractive. I think if you walked around the center of town or tapped anybody on the shoulder and said, "What did Concord Hall look like?" they'd say, "What?"
Right.
So trying to make this look like Concord Hall doesn't matter
It's
to
a little
me.
bit of a moot point with you.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are lots of nice peaks on the Seminary Building, and that's why I like the peaks on this building,
Okay.
even though it looks more like Colquitt Hall, because they're very pointed
Yeah.
dormers
Yeah.
out of the roof line of the seminary building. But there's a lot of pointy stuff.
But
And
that gives it character, I think.
So I like that.
I do too.
Not because it looks like Colquitt Hall, but because it reminds me of some of the lines in the seminary building.
Okay.
And we
It's
take
got
one,
dimension, it's
Yeah.
got depth to it.
Yes.
we take one layer off, I think it's going to look much better.
Okay.
Much better.
Susan,
Yes.
a lot of interesting stuff was just said here, and unfortunately, Mr. Chairman was not here to hear it.
Marissa, did you take down what we
Well,
were
what I
just?
was gonna suggest is that we might wanna just let him know that this is available on YouTube, and he might,
Oh.
one of those people might wanna watch it,
Oh, okay.
just to get a sense for the rest of the conversation.
Yeah,
You know, I didn't
think of that, but I can envision.
I was thinking it the whole time, and then I'm thinking, gee, everybody's talking about Colquitt Hall.
It doesn't change the mission that he's on now.
That's right.
To reduce some stuff.
Yeah.
But some things were said that I think he might be interested in hearing.
Okay.
And that's, if you can convey that to him, that would be awesome.
Sure. So we continued to converse after you left, if you want to see what we were, whatever.
We think it would be of benefit for you to listen in.
All right.
I think that's Glenn's point. I think it'll help him understand the direction we're going in.
It adds a little more perspective, I think,
Yeah.
to our discussion.
I agree.
It matters more to me that we keep that nice tree line that enters the
Yes.
property,
I
front
love
and back,
And
like
that
the
was,
good old days.
Yeah.
Now those maple trees are almost all dead, but that was a part of the beauty of that
I
campus.
agree. It was, I always liked that tree line.
Yes, and those maples, when they turned in the fall, that was a beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful vision to look down there and see the seminary building.
So,
I like that.
does he need all of the parking out here if they're doing parking underneath? Does he
Oh,
need
I
that?
think-
Can you
Yeah,
make it
he
more
does.
green
He-
space?
Yeah, no.
That's too bad.
If we have 100 units,
Yeah.
and our regs say you have to have 2 parking spaces for every unit. See, that's where, like in the warehouse, the new warehouse, what we require and what they were looking for, they had less, because they didn't think they needed as much.
Right.
And then Mr. Chipberg made a comment about, the young man did, about our regulations are older, so we might want to rethink that in terms, do we really need to have 2 parking spaces for every unit?
Well, we can revisit it, but the point is, it's a reg, so.
Correct.
And it
Yes.
clearly says that the planning board can negotiate and come up with an alternative
Correct.
plan.
That's correct.
Based on what the site justifies.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's not a big deal.
Okay.
So are we done with this discussion for now, do you think?
I think so.
I think so.
Okay.
You got anything else?
I appreciate all your
Thought it was a good
comments.
I thought it was a
Glenn
very
had
good
one more thing to
discussion.
talk about,
Oh, yes.
Planning board.
the planning board
That
stuff
was the
for
critical
Glenn.
piece.
I'm sorry.
You had some
Oh.
Planning
update.
board.
Yes. So it's warrant article season, and the planning board is working on a few things. Not a huge number this year, fortunately.
Yay.
Everyone will be glad to know. But one of the items that we started working on last year, it didn't get to the ballot, but we wanted to make sure that we had something to propose this year, is something that addresses food trucks,
Food trucks.
okay?
I agree with you.
So, I mean, we haven't held any public hearings yet, but we've done it in work sessions, and right now it's a one pager, and I didn't copy it for you all because it's still a work in progress. But one of the pieces is to define where these would be allowed, and
Right in front of my house.
That's the ice cream, that's the ice cream
Okay.
truck.
I'm parking in my driveway.
Do you get to pick which ones you want?
Well, Lexi's.
Well, Adam wants one close to his house, so
Okay.
you're gonna have to fight him for that.
Well, you better have one near the fire station so I can pick up some.
Okay, so, the proposal that we were talking about, would allow them not in the residential areas, but in the commercial commercial areas and the industrial zone. And possibly in HD1, but only by by application to this board. So this board would have, say over what the application is.
Like where? Where would they?
See, it would be site plan review and planning board for everything else.
Right. But where would they go in the HDs? Like, what would you say, like,
Well-
in front of town hall on some
One
days or
of the
something?
roads that
Well,
cuts through the
Masonic
plains.
temple.
If it's on public property, if it's on like the plains or
Yeah.
here in the town hall, I don't think that the boards regulate that. That's a town thing.
It would be through the health.
That would be through health and through the
officer.
select board.
Correct.
So they could just come up and park in one of the in-between streets on the plains and set up?
And I don't think they really can, because there were some food trucks over at the VFW,
Yeah.
and
That's private property.
yeah, but they were still regulated by the health officer. They
Oh,
still,
yes.
They still have to have certain standards of cleanliness.
Mm-hmm.
Right, right.
No,
So the question I wanted that I sort of was tasked to bring here is, are food trucks of interest to this body in the historic district? And
Yes.
in this case, we'd be
Yeah.
talking HD1 only.
Yeah.
HD1, I would say yes. I would say
I have
yes.
a big place I could put a food truck in HD2.
Well, talk to Sheila Briggs, I bet she'd have a few comments on that one.
Glenn, would those also have hours, just like that stores have hours? Like, we ask, when will you close your store? So that a food truck needs to go home and come back again?
Right.
Right, they can't just.
Yeah, because there's residents there, they may get upset if you've got a food truck parked out. I don't know the smell, but I don't know. If it's right in front of your house and you've
Well,
got Lexi's, you're gonna be like,
because
oh, wait a second.
because it would be regulated by site plan review, all of the site plan review stuff comes into play, which is lighting, signage, hours,
Okay.
parking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, all that stuff.
Yeah.
One of the issues, though, that was raised at the planning board is that however we propose this, we want to make sure to reach out and include in the discussion as many restaurant owners and business owners as possible, because a business that invests in a brick and mortar store, which is pretty costly,
Right.
establishes a business and a clientele, and then all of a sudden there's a mobile vendor running around,
Stealing their food
parking
business,
right
right?
across the street.
Mm.
So
Interesting.
not to say it shouldn't be done, but it needs to be part of the discussion.
Right.
I think we should allow food trucks with the restraints accordingly. I think that's the coordinate. We may want to do certain times a year. We may want to.
Well,
If we do it by permit, then it doesn't matter. We can restrict it any way we want. But
if the consensus, if the general flavor of the temperature of this body is that you'd like to have that as an option for HD1, then perhaps someone or some individuals from HDC should be at the planning board meeting where this gets discussed.
And do you know when that's going to be? Did you say that already?
It will be discussed again, I believe, at our first Tuesday meeting in December. That'll be the next work session on this, so whatever that date is.
to the 7th, I think.
Well,
If ours is the 15th, it was just a Wednesday.
Yeah.
So 14th is Tuesday, the 7th is the first.
They took our second Tuesday of the month in December.
So it would be the 14th.
Ellen did for the
Ellen.
food bag.
I couldn't put it. Yes.
The 7th is the first Tuesday in
The
December.
7th.
And I'm doing this from memory, but I believe that
It is the 7th. I'm
No, not the date. I
I
looked
see.
that up.
Okay.
But I believe that's the next time that we will
Review
be
this.
reviewing ordinances.
So I'm a little bit confused about, you said that if food trucks were wanting to be on town land, like what, the parking lot of the town hall, then it
Town hall,
doesn't really
the
have any.
plains. The plains would be, because we have like 3 or 4 streets that cross the plains.
Okay.
It's
So
town
that doesn't
property.
really, that wouldn't impact our commission here, right? Because that's town property,
Well,
they don't really govern what happens there?
That's true.
So where else, where in
I could
HD
see-
would there,
I
would
could
it
s-
pertain? That's
I
my
could
question.
see them piling, fighting for the, state park.
Well, you've got.
While the state park's in business, I could
Yeah,
see them
and then
fighting
you've
for
got
that.
A couple of large plazas with a lot of parking areas.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's true.
And the Masonic Temple,
that's
that's
not-
where used to be the hot dog guy.
Oh,
Remember that?
Should
And
the
there was a
businesses
hot dog
be
guy
charged if they
in the
work?
property across from the carriage house plaza, but that's just outside of HD1. So, we've had a few.
they could be at established business sites,
Yeah,
coming
they
in.
could, yeah. But it could
There are a
be,
few places.
Could it become an eyesore for the historic district if we have like 50 of them parked at once? I mean, how do you
So I think-
take into consideration for this?
I think that's part of going to that meeting and listening to what planning board has to say and what the options are and what the restrictions are. It's at grassroots level here right
Yeah,
now,
right,
starting
right.
just,
we might want to limit it to events. If we had a craft fair on the plains,
Mhm.
would we allow them then? Or the Kingston days allow additional? We might want to restrict Kingston days because we get vendor fees for
Right,
those.
right.
But if they participated as part of the Kingston days, that
Then
would
they
be
could.
normal anyways. But I could see it happening for special events more than in just on an irregular basis. But let's say when the apartments go through, would someone want to be able to have a food truck come?
Just park in there, yeah.
Yeah,
And
but then that's private property again.
It is, and that would be, that
What?
would fall under regulation.
Correct,
Okay,
right?
yeah, so that's a good point.
Some people can't cook, excuse me, some people can't cook their own, with Meals on Wheels,
Right,
Yeah.
and so they would love to have a food truck,
right.
even if
Well,
it's a
and
hot dog.
And they're very popular right now, food
Yeah.
truck. You go to some towns and they have designated parking
Yeah,
lots
yeah.
filled with food trucks.
Yeah.
With a variety
Right.
of foods and tastes and so forth, which is not a bad idea.
Or even like a farmer's market. I mean, we had a fledgling farmer's market,
Correct.
but, you know, if this apartment building project goes through and we've got a lot of foot traffic, maybe a farmer's market will spring up
Come
again
back
and,
to town.
Yeah.
you know.
We'd have enough volume to support a farmer's market, which
Well, that's
would
it.
be
I mean,
awesome.
a project like this would help you get the critical mass of
Mm.
walking people and people within the town.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, it would.
my oldest son lived in California for quite a while, and let me tell you, they knew where the good food trucks were, because there was some really good food trucks.
Really good food trucks.
You know, you say maybe even a hot dog, but some of them were really outstanding food.
Tacos and
Yeah,
and
all kinds of,
bananas.
yes.
You can keep on going.
These are not your dad's canteen truck that
No,
that show up
it's
at
not- and-
Lobster and clams on it.
Lobster
Oh, we love
rolls.
that.
Yes, we love it.
All right, well, I'll be around on that
Excuse me,
I'll
Glenn.
be around on that day.
Excuse me, just let us know if that's the
When
planning
when it's on
board.
your agenda.
Let us know if that's the planning
Assume
board.
that it is unless I tell you otherwise,
All right.
because I can pretty, that is our next opportunity to do it, and I believe that's when we
Right,
continue. the
okay,
discussion.
All right.
I've got it down.
All right, me too.
Okay. I'll let you know if
If there's
I
a
find a note
change.
otherwise.
Okay. I make a motion the meeting be adjourned.
Second.
Very interesting night.
All in favor?
Yes.
I appreciate you guys, all of your comments, et cetera.
This is the night we've
Very
been
nice.
waiting for.
Yes.
For a long
Start,
time.
yeah, it's a start.
Till
No,
we
no
really,
question.
really make some progress beyond hair pulling. And what will we ever do with that?
I feel like I've been living and sleeping on San Seminary for the last at least 5 years.
How many,
At
what will we
least
do
that.
with Sanborn Seminary committees have I been
Oh
on?
my God.
So that is going to be a demo permit and a public hearing for it, because we decided on all construction is gonna be public hearing. So
Right,
that's
right.
what we'll be expecting.
Yes.
Okay.
So, was there anything else we had to check on? We,